Good evening, everybody. Let's get started. I think we've got everybody in attendance. This meeting will start out normally. I've kind of got it set up to do something a little different. We'll cover our regular items, go over things we have on our agenda, talk about old business, new business. And then after we get done that, the rest of the session will just be like a working session for us to develop our milestone sheet and start outlining our facilities plan from there. So once we get to that point, if anybody is welcome to stay and watch, and Bob has to stay and continue the broadcast. But if you want to drop off at that point, you're welcome to, because after that it'll be just the committee, the four of us mainly, trying to hash things out, and it probably won't be very interesting. We also have Ann Sermon here today. She's going to speak.
Chris, just as a etiquette thing, you need to do.
Yeah. Sorry, I got to do the
COVID stuff.
Yeah, the COVID stuff. Gosh, where did I put that? Thank you for reminding me, Rob. Now I got to find.
It's in the folder. It's under Preamble. No.
Is it under town documents? Yeah, virtual meeting guidelines. Okay.
We're also, just so we're missing Amanda too, just so everybody knows that.
Oh yeah, she had emailed. She is not going to be able to make it tonight. Oh, you probably saw that, Mark, right?
I don't.
So does that mean?
Oh, I think it was.
Does that mean Mark's a sucky for the minutes?
Yeah. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because pressure's on right now. So
yes,
to be as good as Amanda's, just so you know that.
Yeah, we want flawless minutes at the conclusion of the meeting.
Yeah,
that was crazy. All right, so I'll do the preamble. Good evening. As chair of the Facility Advisory Committee, I am declaring that an emergency exists, and I am invoking the provisions of RSA 91-A2 3B. Federal, state, and local officials have determined that gatherings of 10 or more people pose a substantial risk to our community in its continuing efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19. In concurring with their determination, I also find that this meeting is imperative to the continued operation of town government and services, which are vital to public safety and confidence during this emergency. As such, this meeting will be conducted without a quorum of this body physically present in the same location. At this time, I also welcome members of the public accessing this meeting remotely. Even though this meeting is being conducted in a unique manner under unusual circumstances, the usual rules of conduct and decorum apply. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance when each member states their name. Also, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you. So we'll start with Peter Lennon.
Here, I'm alone in the room.
Rob Corson.
I am here and I am alone.
Mark Layton.
Here and I'm alone.
And Chris Weeks, I'm here and I'm alone as well. Okay, so I just have one quick item before we get to our guest, Ann. Oh, and also we have Dave on the phone, Dave Sharples. Daryl Brown is here. He looks like he's sitting in the South Pacific somewhere. And Melissa is here as well. Melissa survived her first week as interim town manager. She's still here. That's good. So the first item I have on the agenda is a quick one. It is Rob and I, our terms conclude this April. We're the only ones this year whose terms run out. I was contacted by the town already. I did express my intent to continue, so I think they just have to put that before the select board in April, and we'll continue on with another 3-year term after that. So I'm still in it. Rob, are you still going forward after this?
Yes, I am still after. Okay. Participate.
All right. Thank you. So that's it. And yeah, everybody else is, I think the next April is when the next terms would come up. So the next item on the agenda, this was kind of set up by Peter. Peter and Ann have been discussing things in terms of the new public safety complex. And Ann is the chair of the Police Stakeholders Committee. So thought this would be a good opportunity to bring her in. We can discuss what their role is going to be in a new facility and how we can work together with them to firm up some of the requirements for the new building and possibly work through them to the public to get some information out. So we'll go from there. Ann, would you like to, I hate to put you on the spot, but I know you've been at this stuff for a while. So yeah, if you just want to speak to what you folks are doing and to what your role is in all of this, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I'm actually here by myself as well. One of my canines two of the canines are here. One's on my lap, which there's nothing. Yes, and first it started as a completely informal conversation. You know, Peter Lynn, full disclosure, is a neighbor of mine, and we ran into each other and got talking about this, and we got talking about other neighborhood events, planning, etc. But I also thought, and so when I didn't zoom in last time, but I was able to watch the video of your last meeting. So I did hear some of the discussion and read the minutes. I appreciate you sending me those. So I just thought I'd start briefly because I understand, in some ways, it may appear that we have no role. And I just wanted to take a step back and just let your committee know that the mission of the Exeter Police Stakeholders Committee, we are advisory to the chief. This committee was formed as a result of the Center for Public Safety Management study that was presented to the town in June of 2020. So there is a section of that report on pages 61 through 63 that do in fact discuss facility physical plant. Admittedly, this is literally goal number 5. We have 5 goals posted on the website, I believe, and also just for our committee. We're up to goal 2 in our meetings. And admittedly, most of what we're talking about is more community-facing, how do we work with the police and the community, making sure that our police department reflects what the community wants. So certainly that's not nearly as concrete as the facility aspect, but there is absolutely a role that we will, it's a role and a goal, number 5, about infrastructure. So that I think is kind of how Peter and I got talking, that it wasn't nearly as far afield as we might have thought. So that being said, I just wanted to mention that in the report, it's boring to read things, but the report makes it pretty clear that our police department physical plant is completely out of date. And they're amazed in the report that we've done no capital improvements to that department, to that building in all these years, which I'll even say I'm embarrassed to say that. I know over the years, even way back when I was on budget, different projects did come through. I know we did something with the entrance way, and this is going way back, but there really have not been any major enhancements to that building. And it is, like I said, it's noted, and they basically say you need to start over. You need to, don't even throw good money after bad. I mean, basically they say in this report, you really need to start, and get a new building. And in fact, and I agree with it, they actually say you should separate the police. There's no reason to keep them together, frankly. And in fact, you could make a case that a fire department has to be built completely different. They have different building codes than a police department anyway. They'd be more strict, and I'll leave that to the experts. But I just wanted to use that as sort of an introduction to the whole thing. So I definitely think there may be a role for us, probably down the road, or even along with you. I mean, I have not talked to I mentioned this to our committee on our last meeting, and I told them I would be coming to this. So I will bring back what comes out of this discussion. Because I do appreciate the fact that that Peter reached out, because there is a role. Again, it is a little bit down the road, technically on our goal, but it doesn't matter when we do these things. And I'll quickly mention the warrant article, because I do support it. I do agree with it. And I only hope that you have enough money in there, because I would actually like to see drawings and renderings and cost estimates. And that's what the CPSM committee or that report says. They really couldn't make a judgment because they had nothing to go on, but they just did an analysis of the building and said, you really need to do something. You really need to update, and you really need to start from the ground up because nothing's been done. Didn't mean to go on and on, but does that help at least get the conversation started? That we're thanks, Rob. That we're happy to because quick thing I'll say is right now we're talking about recruitment and retention of police officers. Really tough to do, and to me, physical plant is also part of what you present to people. Not unlike a school or a university, maybe physical plant isn't what you think of when you think of education. You think of we have to get good teachers and that kind of thing, but we also need a building and the type of infrastructure for those police officers to do their jobs effectively. So that's kind of another, again, not concrete, I realize, but we need to be able to attract good police officers to the town of Exeter. And in these times where policing is not all that popular, frankly, as a career, anything else. And I realize that's a lower reason to have it. We need a safe building.
Yeah.
So
that's all. Yeah, we all agree with that. We toured the police and fire department last summer. We saw definitely a need for a much better facility. We've read that report too and concur with all the findings on it. So where we're at now, Peter might have told you, but I'll just reiterate. So the warrant article is for $100,000 to conduct a feasibility study. We originally were looking for a warrant article of anywhere from 150 to 200,000 because we think that's what it would take to really evaluate multiple sites, come up with some really rough cost estimates, do the programming, etc. But we understand times are a little tough too, so we can't always get all that we want for our money. So I guess our plan, Ann, at this point is if the warrant article passes next Tuesday, we have provided Dave Sharples with a request for a proposal outline, and that was for our original $200,000 budget. So we're going to have to go through and streamline that a little bit to get what we think $100,000 will get, and what would be the best outline of the RFP to achieve that. So that's where we're at this point. So actually things could start moving pretty quickly. Like if it gets approved, they're going to go into planning. Dave will put out the RFP, hopefully by the end of March, maybe in early April, and should get some firms providing proposals after that, and maybe some will be engaged, by late spring. So I think the design could pick up pretty quickly. If that gives you an idea of the timeline that we're looking at right now. And then once the feasibility study starts too, is we're hoping to be able to, as they develop and analyze different sites, we want to bring those ideas to the public too and get some feedback from the public on what they see as well. So that's probably what we're looking at through the summer. Does anybody else have anything to add? Peter, Rob, Mark?
No, I think that covers it. And when's your next meeting?
Our next meeting is actually next Tuesday. We meet every other Tuesday at 3:00. And
okay, so it's kind of all right. So there's no time for your stakeholders committee to. I don't even know if you take a position on the warrant article. There's no real time for you to have taken that position and then have that promoted so that voters might know that.
Yeah, good point. Right, because we really weren't, full disclosure, it probably wasn't even on anyone's radar in the way that it might have been, because, you're right. And I think Selectman Brown had mentioned that, it wasn't really in the purview of us, and that's why I stated at the beginning, it wouldn't have been the first thing we would have thought of. But it certainly is part of the whole package. So, and I mean, I can certainly bring it up at the meeting, even though it's literally election day. We almost weren't going to have the meeting because it's election day, but we are going to have it. But certainly we will definitely start talking about it as I said, because I'm going to report back on the fact that I met with this committee.
Okay. And Ann's group, they have a page on the town website. So if anybody's looking for their information, I assume you post all your minutes. Well, all the minutes from their meetings will be posted on the town website as well. So if anybody wants to see what they're up to, they're featured prominently on the webpage.
Right, I welcome you to. We have videos as well, same as all the other committees. Okay. Yep, we have video minutes. So yeah, and I'll put a plug in for our survey. Please take our survey. We're going to keep it open past Election Day, March 15th. We originally said we'd close it, but I've got we did one last push before we take it all in. Oh, thank you, Bob.
Oh, there we go.
Bob is great. You guys all know that.
Bob's the best.
He is screen share aficionado. Oh, thank you so very much. It's really easy. It's quick. We spent our first 3 meetings really honing this thing. So hopefully there's some. Although I feel bad. We didn't ask any structural questions in terms of the physical plant. But anyway,
I think that's okay.
We'll do another one sometime. But thank you. I really appreciate Has this been helpful at all to you? I hope. I mean, is it some level of help what I've had to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Good.
And I guess the last thing, Ann, for me would be, as we work through, say, this feasibility study and we're looking for public feedback and stuff, we'll contact you guys, maybe sit in on a meeting, show you what's going on, or maybe Dave will arrange some sort of presentation for multiple groups or something. And then, anything you guys can do to get this stuff out to the public to get as much feedback as possible, we'd appreciate.
No, absolutely. We'd be happy to do that. I think that they would enjoy it. It's a nice mix. We've done a lot of heavy stuff of late, so in a way, it's kind of nice to have something a little different. But as I say, to me, it's all part of the holistic, not to be cliche, but it really is a holistic approach to, as I say, whether it's education, policing, any type of public service, you need, the facility is in fact part and parcel of the whole, presentation to the community. So it is something we should do. And I appreciate Peter Lennon reaching out to me because I don't know as I would have thought about that. It would have come up, but we might have been down the road, as I say. So This has brought it to the forefront, and I greatly appreciate that. We're happy to help you any way we can.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Any other questions or comments for Ann? No? Okay. Ann, you're welcome to hang around. If you want, you can drop off as well. But thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep, thanks.
Enjoy. Now,
I got to bounce back. I missed our first agenda item. I forgot to review the last meeting's minutes and approve those. I'm a little disjointed. I've been very busy with work the last couple of weeks, more so than usual. So I apologize for being a little all over the place tonight. So let's go back to the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Did anyone have any comments or changes for those?
I had one clarification.
Okay.
On the third page, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line, there's a reference to Peter Layton.
I saw that as well. Yes.
And I don't know. I don't know whether I said what the next sentence says, or whether Mark said what the next sentence said. So I was going to ask Mark, did he raise that issue, or did I raise that issue?
I'm actually trying to find, Peter, those meeting minutes so I can look and.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm trying to find Amanda's email.
Yeah, Peter, I had the same comment. That was the only thing that I
mean, it's no big deal. We can leave it at Peter Layton, and then, we can both take either the blame or the.
Yeah. So which one is it? Number.
On the last
page 3, third page, 5th line down. 4 words in, the 4th word in from the right. Peter Layton asked. Did you ask that? Or did I ask that?
You can just flip a coin.
I don't recall. I think it must have been you, Peter. I don't recall asking. So.
Okay, I mean, I'm not certain I recall either, but if you want to just change, I would move the acceptance of the minutes, assuming nobody else has any issues, with the one correction that one word name is changed from Leighton to Lennon,
Yeah, I agree. That's the only change I had.
which would require a second.
Second that.
Yeah. So this is just a technical question. Maybe I can do this later, but in my meeting minutes for today, am I supposed to say this, that we're making these edits to that, or what am I supposed to put in the meeting minutes? I'm so sorry.
Minutes accepted with the following change, then just maybe a brief description of what the change is.
Or one technical correction.
Yeah.
If you don't want to mention specifically, you just say one technical correction.
Okay. Thanks. Great. Thanks, Tom.
And then let's vote on the minutes. Does anybody have a move to accept the minutes with that one change? Or did Peter, you already did that?
I did, I think.
Okay.
Yes, and I seconded it.
Oh, okay. So we'll take a vote. Peter, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
And Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
And I say aye as well. So minutes are accepted by a vote of 4-0 with that one change. Moving along, the next item on the agenda is, so we had our discussion with Ann. So I've got an item for old business. I've got 4 things listed there. The first one was a DPW update. My intent was to call Jen Perry just to discuss how they intend to move forward with the DPW project. I have not had a chance to call her, so I will make sure that I do that either tomorrow or next week. So by the next meeting, I should have more of an update on that, on how they're looking to proceed. And then item after that is Rains Farm. At one point last year, we had talked about scheduling a tour of the site. Rob reminded me of that this week. So I guess we have to set up a time. I forget who our contact is there as well.
It's Bill
Campbell.
Yeah.
Bill Campbell, okay.
Yeah. I'll forward you his contact information.
Okay, yeah, if you do that, is he an email guy or a phone guy?
Email works.
Okay, I'll just shoot him an email. I'm not super psyched about walking around there in March because it's probably going to be quite muddy, but can dress appropriately. And is everybody else up for that? Like maybe sometime later this month or early April to do a tour of Rains Farm?
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
And try to get back into that project. I've pretty much forgotten what is all involved with that one. Do you have any other comments on that?
Did they apply for an LCHIP grant or something like that, or was they waiting for us?
I don't think
There's
they
a
could
chicken and egg situation.
Yeah, they couldn't do the grant request until they get some commitment of funds from the town, I believe.
Okay.
Well, that's their claim.
Chris,
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
if I may, I'll just give you a quick update. Yeah, Kristen Murphy has been working with Bill Campbell, Sally Ward, and the building inspector, and they went out and got a quote from a couple of vendors to perform an assessment on the building, and Conservation Commission on that. They actually met this morning to review the couple of proposals that they got. I mean, it's small money. It's like about, I think the proposal is $2,500. And that's where they're at with that. And they're going to make that recommendation to the Concom at their meeting next week.
Okay, thank
They're
you.
looking to get a structural assessment, what's wrong with the building, and then with that, they plan to apply for an LCHIP grant with specifics on what needs to be done. And LCHIP pays, well, I don't know them. They're usually about 50-50 match on something like this.
Hey, this is a question. Is that the $2,500, is that for the structural assessment or is that for something else?
Yeah, that's for the assessment, yes, on the building.
All right, thanks.
I think that I'm not certain it's going to be an issue, but I think one of the questions is going to be, how much does the town have to approve in some way, shape, or form, or allocate or assign to demonstrate to the LCHIP grant administrators that the town's committed to doing something about the building? Because the Conservation Commission, or at least Bill has pretty strongly implied that there's some sort of, he thinks they need some kind of demonstration from the town about money in order to get the LCHIP grant. But I don't know if that's changed, but that was it. The last time he came before us, that was kind of what he said. Dave, Rains Farm was in the CIP, wasn't it? For like $214,000?
Yes, with 107 coming out of the general fund and 107 from LCHIP. But they did not get the grant, so
Right.
It didn't move forward. And I would imagine that would be the same next time. And if they do, if it passes and they get then they can commit the funds and accept the grant if they get it.
Okay, anything else on that one? Thanks, Dave. That's very helpful. Good update. Next item. So as far as committee activity, I don't have anything to report as far as us crossing paths with other committees, but the one item I do have is this item that's being put together called the Green Minute Video. So Renee of I believe the Energy Committee or Sustainability Committee, one or the other, she had an idea of getting the various committee... Energy Committee, okay. So Renee had the idea to have each of the committee chairs submit a 1-minute video around the town's sustainable activies. So I will be doing a 1-minute video on Monday with Bob. I've got to write a script for it. Does anybody have any great ideas of what we should say in terms of our sustainable approach to facilities? I mean, I do have my own thoughts, but I'd love to have you guys provide some input as well. And I'll reach out to Amanda by email, see if she has any ideas.
I think for me, one of the things is the reinvestment in properties that already have embodied energy. That to me is a big one. So the idea would be is that if you're not redeveloping or developing new properties, but redeveloping and improving properties that already have been developed is a big one for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things. One thing I would say is that, on our committee between, and Peter might even have some experience, between Rob and Mark and I mean, we have experience designing, constructing, and managing new facilities that have some of the latest, what we call green technology on them. I'm real familiar with it. Mark probably is too, and Rob, you probably are as well. So, I mean, we look to all the projects that are brought to us through that lens as well. We're looking at everything in terms of its sustainability, its energy performance, that sort of thing. So, I'll be sure to mention that as well.
I think it's, and I don't know if this goes too far or not, but I think it's worth suggesting that the facilities committee will be considering as it evaluates future maintenance and renovations and new buildings, that obviously it's the sustainability aspects of those investments is clearly going to be one of the important considerations. And while it may not be, it certainly won't be the entire consideration, and it won't necessarily be the most important one, but it is an important it is important enough that it's kind of on our checklist to make sure that we as you said, review the facilities or the project through that lens, and then obviously see whether that investment in sustainability is, cost effective for that particular project. I mean, unless people think that'll tie our hands, it just simply says, we're going to consider it.
Yeah, and one of the things now, Peter, it's become more ingrained as part of a basic project. 5 years ago, it might have been more of an adder, but now when you look at a new building or even renovating an old building, it's just assumed now that you're going to do what you can to maximize energy efficiency and try to use renewable energy. So that they're not outliers anymore. They've become pretty mainstream.
Good.
If I could add, just because I talked to Renee about her video idea, she's also looking, I think, more specifically for kind of updates on what you've been doing or plan to do or recently did that involves sustainability in any way, if that makes sense. Because I think her larger picture is a quarterly kind of, here's what the committees in town have been up to with sustainability, in the last, quarter. And then, whether it's, you looked at this project and that or this. And I think that's what she was going for with it. I don't want to totally, you guys can say whatever you want in it, but that's kind of what she was looking for in the email that she had sent to me about, what the idea was.
Have they developed I'm going to say kind of a goals and things like that when in regards to sustainability committee? I mean, sustainability is a hugely broad group of topics. So it's...
Yeah, and I guess I'll rephrase what I said, because she is from the energy committee, and it's coming from that. And I guess it's, more broadly, I guess, energy and sustainability. I guess you could reach out to Renee on what she was.
Yeah, so that's a good qualification. Is what are we doing in regards to looking at the energy portion?
No, that's helpful, Bob. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when we looked at the rec center, we evaluated that based on some of the energy performance features that they were looking to incorporate in that.
I also think so. I'd say in general that as we're evaluating buildings, the idea of things like boiler replacements and all these other things, any of equipment replacements, anything that we're doing would have that at the same lens, right? If you can either use high efficiency or use other methodologies, and like
heat pumps and things like that.
Right.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that before we move on? I'll try to come up with something to make you proud. And then I think the video is to be released on Earth Day, which is that April 1st? I believe. But anyway, whenever Earth Day is, that's when it'll be, I think that's when it's scheduled to be published, but Bob can correct me and probably should. All right. So the last item I had on old business was just library renovations. I don't know if we've touched on that lately. I still see contractors out there, so it's not quite done. I don't know if we know where the state of that is and when substantial completion is coming. I don't know if Dave knows that. Dave, if you're still on the line.
No, but I can check with Hope and have an update for the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because, I still see workmen there, and I don't know if they've opened up the new areas or not.
They have opened up some new areas, and in the process of doing work inside the facility. They're still working on the interior.
Okay. That's all I have for that one. So that's it for my old business items. And then anybody have any new business items? I do not.
I thank Dave for sending along the spreadsheet with the town-owned properties. So we have that. I've actually got a couple things I put in there. I'm just going to post that to our Google Drive, so we'll have at least a start of listing. So as we go on and begin to think about categories we want to add to that list, we can start to at least build that out a little bit as a baseline for giving that to potentially a consultant at sometime in the near future.
Sounds good. Anything else for new business, Peter?
Nothing, by the way. There's only one reference. I could have missed it, but in the report from LaSalle on the Public Works Garage, there's one reference to energy efficiency, about promoting energy efficiency by reducing exterior door penetrations. But there doesn't appear to be any references to energy beyond that, and there doesn't appear to be anything related to sustainability. So I guess the Public Works Department may not be paying enough attention to that. Or
Yeah, we'd have to see more of. Yeah, they're very light on the proposal. We just don't know what they're proposing at this point. So, let me go back, Dave. I think you had a comment to address Rob.
No, I had another update that I thought to share with the committee. The Renee Allen, the chair of the Energy Committee, reached out to me a couple weeks ago because Andy Duncan, who runs the building operators certification program through the Lakes Community College, reached out to her as he had one of his students that's going through the certification process, and part of that certification is finding a building to do an energy assessment audit on. And the gentleman is, an energy professional, works for an engineering consultant firm. There would be no cost to the town. So I ran it by Melissa, and we agreed to have them perform an energy assessment on the town offices building at no charge through the builder operator certification process. So be happy to share that with you when it's done. It's valuable information. I actually got certified. I'm a certified building operator through that exact program several years ago. So it should be a good product to have. And it'll recommend energy efficiency improvements to the building.
Great, thanks, Dave. You think, when will that be done? Like, I know you haven't even got them signed up yet, and now we're asking where's the report, but any idea on a time frame for that? Should you look at that by the end of the year or sooner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the program, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if I muted or unmuted myself. The program is an 8-week program, so it will be May. We will receive the document.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Mark, did you have anything?
No, it's just really hard to stay engaged when I'm typing meeting minutes. I'll tell you that right now.
I guess that's why I was so bad at it. I didn't take good notes.
Yeah.
I was too interested in listening and talking. So
just put the link to the video.
There you go.
Copy and paste. Done.
Well, I'll tell you, it's crossed my mind why we're doing this when we're all being recorded, but
yeah, that's a good point. So as far as new business too, I guess that concludes. I don't have anything. Daryl, if you're still there, I don't know if you have anything you would like to pass on to us.
I don't. The elections or voting is next week, next Tuesday. I don't have a sense of how anything's going to go. I know the select board's made their support or recommendations, or where things weren't recommended, they won't appear. But I won't have anything to report either way until after Tuesday.
Sounds good. And I think you folks approved all the warrant articles, right? The select board?
We did, and then when there was
recommended?
Yeah, wherever there was a recommendation.
Okay.
With the exception of the DPW.
I thought
the DPW warrant article was defeated. So that doesn't even exist.
Right.
There's nothing there.
I'm just saying what's on the ballot, they've recommended them all. I guess they would be if they're on the ballot. I'm figuring out how this works.
It actually could be on the ballot and say it's not recommended. Select board. Technically.
Okay. How would that happen? Because the select board votes on the articles.
So you can have a citizen's petition.
Oh, I see.
So just a technicality. Some articles do not require or have like a recommendation or not recommended, and others do. So that's what Daryl, select board member Brown, was mentioning. So like some have. You can find that on the homepage of the website. If you click sample ballot, can be found here. You'll be brought to that, and you can see which ones are recommended and which ones are not, or things like that.
Very helpful. Thank you again, Bob. All right. So at this point, I'll conclude the regular part of our meeting. We'll move on to the working session for the committee members. Anybody is welcome to stay, or if you'd like, you can drop off as well. Do we have to vote on that or anything, Rob, or is that just move forward? Okay. All right. So the first thing in our working session, there was a couple things. One is the kind of the milestone or the timeline that we would develop. I haven't really put much together. I've got just a basic outline. We can start filling in dates and milestones on that. And then the second part was for a facilities plan to kind of start fleshing out an outline of that, what the goals are. It's pretty early, but we can start talking about what it would look like in the final deliverable form, and go from there. So, Bob, am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to, yep.
Oh, there it is, share screen. Okay, let me pull up spreadsheet first. Okay. So if you can see my screen now, I've just got a very basic spreadsheet started. And my intent for this would just be to fill out, key dates and to put in what our work product and our deliverables will be over that period. So we can kind of just have one spreadsheet, which would be a snapshot of what our year looks like going forward. Peter, I didn't really develop this. You had sent me something. Can you describe what you sent me that would have dates? I think it was something from last year. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, it's on our website, but it's the time we developed a timeline, a flow chart, or whatever you want to call it, for our major inputs to the 2021 budget. And so there's a timeline there that discusses when we would meet with the town, officials or departments, when we make recommendations to the town manager, when we recommend to the town planner, when we recommend to the planning board, the budget recommendations committee, and the select board. So there, all of that is there under, if you want to go down to,
I don't know if you can see my
I think
screen.
it's the first one. Yeah, this one right here.
Okay.
And, I don't per se care which format you use. And this was only focused pretty much on the key budget process input points. If you want to add with more granularity things like, go to this site, site walk here, site walk there, that sort of thing, then you would, maybe, I don't know how granular do you want the timeline you're working on to be?
Yeah, I want specifics. Like, what if we schedule the Rains Farm walk for the end of March? I would put that on that list. And then the other key points would just be like, when are big town milestone timelines, and what do we want to track in terms of our deliverable, like a draft due on this date, final report due this date kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. So in essence, the broad outlines we've already done. It doesn't have the granularity that you want at this point. And it only deals with the budget process. It doesn't include, site walks. And it may or may not track, although it was supposed to track with pretty much with Dave Sharple's memo, Russ Dean's memo to the town department heads drafted by Dave. So it really depends on how much you either want to. Why don't we start with those? Why don't we start with the budget milestones, and then we can start to fill in the gaps, because I think that's something is a consistent process as far as when things go out to the department heads, when the recommendations come back from the department heads, when the budget committee starts their process, and then what milestones there are in that process to back up to when the select board makes their final recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So, and we can't bring it up, but the PowerPoint slide on the website basically does that for the big deliveries, if you will, the big deliveries by the facilities committee, and we used that basically last year. It doesn't have some of the feedback parts, whereas the town people, the town department heads report back to Russ or report back to the planning board, or to Dave. But it's got the major budget-oriented activities with rough dates on them. So I guess, depending on how much, Chris, you want to reinvent the wheel, or how much a different format would take what we used and make it more granular and more useful, is probably a function of us all looking at it, if we want to start with that, and then working with Dave to revise it or depart from it into a format that you're comfortable with, Chris, assuming you think that the format we have is deficient because it's overly broad, if you will. It misses too much, if you will.
Why don't we start with that format? So, Chris, what we have on that is the first one, which is a meet with town departments on facilities related proposals. This is the first item that's on the list.
Okay. Yeah.
If you open that, you probably could just cut and paste, copy and paste. It's down your bottom left-hand corner is the
PowerPoint.
Yeah, PowerPoint. And so I'm sure you could just copy that text and paste it into each of the cells.
Yeah. It seems to be just a graphic, but well, let me just say meet with town departments to start.
Oh, it is a graphic. You're right.
And I might have to. Now, was that us to meet with town departments, or is that just this?
Yes, it's all based on what we would do in the process.
Is that something we'd be involved with annually? Like as far as, like I assume they meet with Dave and Russ and now Melissa to review, like they'll do that annually as they work their way into their budgets as far as, submitting their needs lists.
Right.
We haven't been involved in that yet. So are we saying we do this year?
Well, we have to make a decision on that. It was part of the process that was blessed by the select board for how we would interact with the fiscal 21 budget process. We didn't, the first two bullets or the first two, meeting with the town departments and the recommendations by the town manager, we didn't input those. We basically picked up by making recommendations to the planning board after we had done our site walks. So we did not do those first two or even three segments of the process. We just didn't have time for it. We didn't focus on it. We did the recommendations, obviously. We did the site walks in July and August, and we did the recommendations to the planning board, to the budget recommendations committee, and to the select board. So, but these were considered at the time to be early steps to influence the process. If we don't want to do them, we can just make that decision.
I think what we've done to this point has just been to kind of review the large capital projects, especially building projects, not road projects or anything like that, but any kind of major renovation or new building projects. That in the almost 2 years that I've been here, that's been the only things that we've addressed. And as far as getting into the nitty gritty of what each department wants, all the way down to, $25,000 items, I don't think that's the best use of our time. I'm happy to review that stuff after they put it together. And, Dave and the town manager have worked to come to an agreement on that.
Part of that, though, Chris, was this goes back to doing the condition assessment, right? Because we were trying to help the town figure out what they should focus on. Is the budget? I think they were only budgeting $100,000, and is that enough? Is there something else they should be trying to do, and how this ties into these larger capital projects, right? So I think that's where we were when we first started. Before we came on board, my understanding is that we were working with the smaller stuff but trying to help them identify, this long laundry list of items that they need to have done. Because it seemed like that they were focusing on the fires, right? On trying to put out fires. We have this, we got to take care of next year, and not looking past the 1 or 2 years and trying to get them to look at, long-term planning on the smaller stuff, but then the bigger stuff too. So it was kind of, you know what I mean? So it was all kind of mixed together, and then we started to focus on the larger projects because that's what the hot items were. That's my understanding and my thought.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mark. And maybe initially, like this year, we meet with them just to be informed of what they're looking for in their budgets as we develop our kind of facilities plan. You're right. That's the kind of data we need to include in there. What equipment needs to be replaced, et cetera. Right. But I guess I just don't see us meeting with the town departments and then having a voice to say, going through each of their line items on their requests and giving our own opinion on those. I don't I don't have time for that.
No, and I don't either. I think it was, what my thought was is that we would know what the buildings need.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So Jeff, have you thought about, this boiler is on its last legs. Where is this in your plan on these smaller lists? It was just to help them, look towards more than like I said, the short term, looking into the long term. And, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's, I don't think we have that information to help them with that other than just, so I think that's where it'd be, until we get more information on all the assets that they have, I think we are kind of stuck with relying on their expertise.
And that's what I anticipated this year is maybe we start to build those asset lists.
Yeah.
And then work towards coming to our facilities master plan. Publishing the first one of those this year, it might not be completely comprehensive, but it could be the framework that we just update year over year going forward and provide to the select board.
What do you?
I have a question for Dave Sharples. Dave, can you hear me?
I don't know if he's still on the line or not.
Okay. At some point,
Still on
okay,
there.
great. At what point does Jen Perry or do Jen Perry and Jeff Beck finalize, maybe too concrete a term, but at what point do they have a $100,000 maintenance list, or because there's maintenance money elsewhere in the budget, or projects that are in other maintenance pots of money? At one point, do they have lists of what they are intending to do as they create the budget?
Well, that's through the budget process, and I am not involved in that part of it. I'm involved in the CIP. So if it's a major capital project like the DPW garage, I'm part of that. But that would be more a question for, Russ, maybe not Melissa yet. But it's through the budget process, so I'd assume it's sometime over the summer.
Okay. The reason I asked that was because we have looked at that, at least the $100,000 pot, and we haven't looked at the other maintenance pots. But at least the $100,000 pot has in the past attracted our attention because projects in that have had, significant implications for major facilities, such as the cupola.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second so we're trying to make this a productive meeting. And I think part of what we wanted to do in this timeline is really identify the milestones in which we have to hit. And if we could start by hitting the milestones. So the process ultimately is that the town manager solicits proposals from each of the department heads for the 2022 capital process. The budget committee, they go through that process. They review that. The budget committee gets the draft of this information. They go through, they meet with each of the departments to review what they're asking for in their draft budget. They start their public meetings. So do we want to start with that as really the milestones? We're trying to integrate our process into those milestones.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rob, because, we're responding to the town's annual schedule. I do want to know what those major milestones are, and then we fill in, okay, what do we need to address those? So I agree with that.
Okay, I don't disagree with anything you, Rob, have said or you, Chris, have said. But in the past, we've paid attention to at least that $100,000 maintenance pot. And we've gotten into the specifics of that pot because we thought that was going to be significant enough to inform our decisions or recommendations about buildings, projects. So if you don't want
Peter, I thought that was simply because we were looking for funding for the facility assessment.
no, well, okay, maybe that's what everybody else thought, but I thought we would look at, and I thought we were looking at those project lines to see whether or not investing in the town offices made any sense at a particular time, or the town hall project made any sense at a particular time, because of how that would impact on major facilities projects. So if you guys want to not pay attention to those projects, then that sort of takes off the table the renovation repair items that may or may not
Peter,
be significant. So I'm not trying to.
My focus is not on the particulars. My focus is on purely developing a timeline in which we have to develop a scope of what we're going to look at as it integrates with the timeline. I agree with what you're saying. I thought with what one of the things that Chris wanted to do today was just to begin to develop that timeline.
Fine, and that was the reason I asked Dave about when the maintenance lists are ready for prime time, so that we had that as part of our timeline. That's all. I don't want to get into the eaches of a bunch of stuff.
Nope.
But
exactly. So I think that
I just want to know when we're going to have to get involved with that crap later on.
Right.
Yeah, and I hate to backtrack even further, but as I look at this slide too, maybe we can just spend a couple minutes. You know, what on this slide is still germane, and what?
Could I just jump in? I think you're only sharing your internet thing, and we can't see the slide if you're trying to show that.
I'm sorry. How do I do? Let me do a new share.
I'm looking at your spreadsheet. Is that what we're supposed to be looking at?
Just unshare it and then share it again. There you go.
I reshared. Okay, so now can you see the slide now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Bob. I was looking at it. I didn't realize nobody else was. So now as I look at this slide, I'm not concerned, but I guess I just want clarification. What on this slide, and thanks, Peter, for referring us to this. This is going to be really helpful, but are all these items still, all these goals and objectives in this timeline, is that still applicable to us, I guess, at this point? I don't want to get
goals and objectives is probably a separate discussion.
Kind of. I just hate to fill out. I don't want to get too crazy on the timeline if there are items on there, like say as far as meeting with town departments. Maybe that is an item on there, but it's nothing that we have to do anything with.
To be efficient, I mean, I would say we just tag along with the process that they already have, right? So, I mean, that's what we're going back and forth on is if we the process that's happening, let's mirror that. I mean, we shouldn't reinvent the wheel and have the town departments try to do something in addition to what they already have to do, right? So I think I agree. Let's figure out what the process, the dates that they're going to do, and let's piggyback off those. And if Dave's meeting with the town departments on these issues, let's see if we can attend those. Melissa's got her hand up, I guess.
Oh, Melissa does?
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk during your work session, but I was just going to say, I think it's helpful for the departments to be able to meet with Dave and Russ first. And then I would suggest it doesn't need to be long after that, but I'm sure that you guys could come into the process or have a meeting, however you want to do that. But I do think that it would be my suggestion to give the department heads a private meeting with the town manager first, and then come in and chat with you guys, or however you want to do that. But I just see that as needing to happen first. And then, and again, it doesn't need to be months later. It can be a week later, whatever we're talking about here, but that's just a suggestion that I would have.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I wasn't seeking to integrate us into that meeting on there as they develop their budgets for the year. I guess I was just interested in seeing the work product that comes out of it and what they're requesting.
Okay, last year's, by the way, I agree with Melissa. Last year's letter that Dave drafted for Russ laid out June 28th for 2019. They met on June 28th. There were submittals from to Dave from the departments. Then in July, they met individually with the department heads, Dave and Russ, and then had follow-up meetings if necessary. On or before August 1st, they submitted the CIP, that Dave and Russ submitted the CIP to the planning board for their meeting a week later. And then on or before September 30, 2019, they submitted the town manager submitted something to the select board. So I guess we need to know from Dave, what are the analogous dates that apply for this year, and then decide, what we do for whichever ones. And I don't know if Dave's ready to even tell us that yet, because he hasn't drafted the memo, or I don't know, maybe he's drafted the memo. Dave, have you had a chance to sort of scope out the calendar for the CIP at least?
Yes. Yeah. It's the same every year. So we're going to issue the letter, sometime in, April, probably the end of April. We give a couple months for department heads to prepare their submittals, and then the end of June, we have a deadline, so they submit their projects, and then we meet with them shortly thereafter. In the next couple of weeks, first week of July, second week of July, and that's where I would recommend. After we meet, you got involved between then and the planning board. I think that would be, I would rather have you folks in earlier than later, than coming in, when the budget committee starts talking about it, where everything's kind of been finalized. I would rather have you guys in earlier. Right after, between our meetings with them and the planning board meetings. I think that would make most sense.
Okay. I know you guys can't see. Yeah, that sounds good. Let me. So as far as like milestones for that, so there's the town staff meets with departments, correct?
Correct.
And then subsequently we can meet with the town departments.
We need to?
I would say
just wait? Go ahead, Rob.
They draft their recommendations.
Okay, that's the next item. Who does that? The departments?
The departments do.
Okay. And what's the rough timeline for so when the town staff meets with the departments, and the town staff, that's Russ or Melissa and Dave, when does that usually happen? April?
July.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that's July.
Okay, and then the departments draft their recommendations around that time as well? After that meeting?
They've already drafted them.
Oh, when they meet with the town.
They submit, the deadline for their recommendations is about the third week of June. But by then, we know well before that, and like I said before, we'll keep you guys informed of what projects are being considered.
So Dave, if I understand, sorry, Chris.
The town staff meets with the departments in July, and then the planning board is in August. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
Oh, isn't that where we want to insert ourselves? It's right between, it's in July, August timeframe, right? Before it goes to planning board, we want to be able to weigh in and provide our comments and feedbacks, right? So it's in that. That's what I think. Peter, you're shaking your head. Yep. And then that's what David mentions, that we can start ourselves. We'll know what's coming, but we can provide a more formal review right after the town planner gets recommendations, and then before it goes to the planning board. Right.
Right. And so, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. If we do it the way you suggest, we would be able to at least have a chance to influence the CIP before you send it to the planning board the week before their meeting. So that, for example, if we all decided to throw up on the $400,000 for analysis, we could make that recommendation before the CIP gets sent in, and then Dave and Russ can decide whether or not, we've got a good case to change that. And then they can, if they decide it's a good case, they can make the changes, so it doesn't have to happen at the last minute before the planning board. So that means sometime in July, if August 1st is still about the time that Russ and Dave send in the CIP to the planning board, so it's sometime in I don't know, mid-July that we would get in to the process. Is that right, Dave?
That's correct. That's what I would suggest. And then it's not Russ and I after that makes the change. It would go to the planning board adopts the CIP, not staff. So it is a function of the planning board, and we would bring those recommendations from the facility advisory committee and from the department heads together at the planning board and let them determine what the final CIP is.
All right. So yeah, I've noted those things on the spreadsheet. I'll clean it up, and you guys can review it at a later time. So I think that sounds pretty good. So as far as the annual budgeting, things that are occurring, that kind of covers it at that point. And then from the slide after the planning board, I think, Peter, on your original slide, after that was a letter of recommendation to the budget recommendations committee, and then a final one to the select board in November. So I think that sounds good to me.
Yeah, we just have to figure out the meeting dates for the BRC and for the select board. It may still be in early to mid-October or mid to late November. We just probably need to have a discussion about that.
Okay.
Because obviously, at the end of the day, we argued our big recommendations in January at the public hearing on the CIP. And the select board made its final choices at after that public hearing.
Yes. Yeah, and I think this year maybe we'll have, with some more foresight, we'll be able to have more discussions with the BRC before it gets farther along. Like this past year, we were just reacting to the BRC. Okay, so I think that's enough. Let me see, planning board, BRC, select board. Yeah, so that's the process that we would follow as far as the annual budget. I guess the other milestones that we would have for this year is if the warrant article for the public safety complex passes, then we would have some milestones in there for like when the town would send out the RFP, designer selection, and then the various dates that go along with the feasibility study after that. So those would be interwoven through this as well.
And I think you need to consider, and it's partially based on what's in the draft CIP, but if you want to have milestones in there for site walks on major projects, I got the impression you wanted to put those on the calendar as well.
Ones that we know about and we are definitely have planned. I don't want to try to plan out what's going to be in the CIP. I think once the CIP gets published and we want to do something at that time, then we could add it at that time. I don't want to try to plan that far out because we can't.
Okay. And then the question is, again, recognizing we don't want to spend our time, on a $2.30 maintenance item. When do we want to program into our planning reviewing the major maintenance item list?
Yeah, that's a good
because the budget committee is going to be ruling on those. The planning board doesn't get involved with that, I don't think. Does it, Dave?
No, they do not.
Okay, so the budget committee is then going to be the one that makes major recommendations about that $100,000 list. If there are things on that list they do or don't want to take up. I mean, a lot of times they just rubber stamp it. But if we think that list or other maintenance lists have significant items in them, we have to put a placeholder in there in our timeline to review those.
Yeah, my intent, Peter, on that was, this year, and it looks like the first half of the year would be the best time to do that, even though it's almost a third over, or a quarter over, I should say, is as far as our facilities plan, that's where we're looking to itemize town assets. But yeah, I agree with you. That's something we'll have to put on here. And I envision us over the next few weeks or next few meetings is, that's probably going to be our focus, kind of developing that asset list, and that's to address one of our big goals that we've had from the beginning, which is to have some sort of data-based system that we can use to help inform the select board of facility needs and how they can best, make decisions with how we spend our money. So that's how I see this, tying into that. And I agree, we'll have to put some dates down there for, which facilities do we look at, who do we talk to on which date to get a list of all their assets, et cetera. So that's something we'll have to, we'll start fleshing that out in the next meeting probably.
Chris, does it make sense?
So then, yeah. So then you should put after the town vote and before that, all of these lines 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 through 15, those are all CIP related, with the exception of weighing in with the BRC on major maintenance items. So you should, I think, make some distinction between most of that and put a box in right above department draft recommendations, and just say, facilities assessment or, whatever you want to call whatever we're doing over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing that's good, Peter. It would be helpful probably to delineate what's what. Let me just add too that I'm not the sole owner of this spreadsheet. This is available to us all on our shared site. So anyone is welcome to go in and edit it and add anything that they would like to clarify and make things better. And if you need help trying to access this, you can edit this spreadsheet right in a web browser. It's Google's version of Excel, and you can do it from anywhere that has a web connection and a website. So, I'll continue to work on it, but I expect all of us to get in there and update it as well and add dates as needed.
Chris, can I just a couple of things that we can talk more about adding, but I think we should have scheduled meetings with Jeff Beck and just be able to, and not that he has to attend every one of ours, but we should do check-ins with him. And this gets into that $100,000 list, but he's going to know more than we are about what his priorities are. And we can start having good conversations and how that fits into the budgeting so that he would know if we support or not support some of the things he's trying to do.
I agree, and maybe I'll invite him to the next meeting because he also would know pretty much all the major assets and their condition at all the facilities, right?
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, I think he does. I mean, he has his opinion anyways, right? I mean, that's part of what we want to.
But but the DPW takes care of all the buildings unless maybe a certain building has third-party contracted services or something. I don't know, but
I think everything but the library, right?
What's that?
The library is on their own.
Oh, are they? Okay.
That's my understanding.
I think that's a good idea as well, because we should have the opportunity to ask Jeff questions about why his priority list might include items that we know department heads don't think are as high priority. Because obviously, and Melissa will remember this, when we went to the Public Works building, or not Public Works, excuse me, the Parks and Recreation building, and we asked Greg and Melissa about the $25,000 project on the maintenance list. They, for the reflooring and things like that, they said that's not our first priority. Our first priority is COVID related. It's HEPA filters. It's different stuff. And we didn't have an opportunity to ask Jeff Beck, why he thinks reflooring is a higher priority than what the Parks and Recreation people think should be a higher priority. So meeting with Jeff Beck, I think, is really going to be useful.
Melissa, feel free to chime in whenever you like. That's why I made you a panelist.
So I just want to say, I do think what you guys are talking about is fantastic. May I make a suggestion that you give Jeff some time to touch base with the department head? So if I'm thinking about this in my head of sort of the budgeting process, if you sort of aim to touch base with Jeff in May or June, and maybe we can, either Dave or I, give him a heads up that this is sort of one of the things that you would like to suggest, so that as he meets with the different departments, he has that in his head, that is what he will be coming to you guys to discuss. I mean, ultimately it's going to lie with the town manager, but I do think it's great for you guys to be part of that process. So if I were to guess, a May-June timeline with Jeff would probably fit in line with as he's creating it. So, because to understand, you'd like to at least know what his proposals for the $100,000 line item are. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think ultimately, but at this time, I'm more interested in just getting a snapshot of the town's facilities and their major assets for each facility.
Okay.
I think eventually we are interested in that, it sounds like. But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. That's a little later down the road. I agree, Melissa.
Yeah. Okay.
The longer term goal ultimately is if you have a list of deferred maintenance items, you have a schedule for taking care of the deferred maintenance items, and you can separate those from what are department requests versus what's just taking care of the asset. And this is what we're trying to do, is separate the department request from the asset. So, and I think that's part of what Chris and everyone's talking about, is getting a list of what are those deferred maintenance items. Yeah,
we've got a couple things going on, Melissa. One is One is just, like I said, right now we're just trying to generate a snapshot of the facilities and assets, and then that's something we're just going to try to maintain going forward, so that when we do make these recommendations, once the budget requests come out in the summer, then, we can refer to our asset list to see, what really needs some work and what doesn't, kind of thing. So there's a couple things going on there. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, in that case, yeah, we probably, go ahead, Dave. You got 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Just real quick, I think the timeline might, for Jeff, I can invite Jeff, but maybe there was talk about the next meeting, but I'm thinking the next meeting, if the vote goes and the article passes, we'll be focused on the RFP and getting that out to the public safety complex. So maybe I'll reach out to Jeff, and then I'll reach out to Jeff when he can get together some information, and I'll get back to you next meeting about, whether it's the first meeting in April or something like that. That he'll be ready for it. But, okay, that's all my suggestions.
That sounds perfect, Dave. Yeah. Does that sound good to everybody else? Yeah.
It does. Chris, can I ask a question? Because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
You had next on the agenda facilities, plans, develop goals, and framework. But, and maybe this is the same thing, but can we dedicate some time for us to talk about what our priorities are for this next year, and start and then we can put those goals on this with timelines, just so that we can all be kind of working towards those deadlines.
Yes. Yeah, I agree completely, Mark. Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to happen today. So I guess the next meeting in our working session, that'll be the first thing we do, is moving on to that goals and facilities plan.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I'll dress this up a little bit. I know this spreadsheet is not it might not even be the final format that works best for us. I just kind of threw something on the page to start, but I'll clean it up just a little bit and send out a link. And then after that, even before that, you guys are welcome to jump in and edit it at any point. And I'll send the link out for that soon. Yeah.
The other thing is I a little while back started a list of just kind of things that we've talked about as far as project related items, facility related items, and I'll just post that to the site as well. Just a listing of kind of things that have been talked about over the last 10, 15 years, and so we can at least start that list for our planning sessions.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, thanks, Rob. All right, so it's 5:30, and I do like doing hard stops at 5:30, especially today. I am burnt. So Melissa and Dave, thanks for hanging in there. And does anybody have a motion to adjourn? Or I guess before that, is there any final comments before we break up here?
No.
No. Okay. Peter, you've been awful quiet for the last 10 minutes or so. It's not like you. All right.
Hey, when things are going in a positive direction, get out of the way.
Okay.
That's our first goal, then. That's our first goal.
All right. Motion to adjourn, or can I do that as a chair? Can I make motions or not?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. Oh, and Daryl's back too. So vote to adjourn. Peter, how do you vote?
Aye.